That's really the shift from seeing AI as a one-off tool to realizing it's part of a living, evolving system that needs its own care and feeding. And that's where the real work of making AI sustainable and effective comes in.
Welcome to the /podcast, where we lean into the future of IT by inviting thought leaders, innovators, and problem solvers to help slash through its complexity. Today's episode is a little different. We talk a lot on the show about AI, specifically about ChatGPT, how people are using it, where it helps, and where it falls short. So we thought it might be interesting to actually invite ChatGPT onto the show and have a conversation. This isn't a stunt. We're not here to hype anything up. We want to reflect on what actually happened this past year, what we got wrong, and where things might be headed next. And with that, without further ado, joining us today is ChatGPT, an AI language model created by OpenAI. ChatGPT is used by millions of people every day to help write code, think through architecture decisions, draft documents, learn new concepts, and increasingly to collaborate with teams as a kind of thinking partner or a thought partner. It doesn't have opinions, lived experience, or a resume in the traditional sense, but it's trained on a broad mix of technical knowledge, patterns, and conversations across industries. We talk about ChatGPT a lot on the show, so we thought it was time to actually invite ChatGPT on and have a conversation. So with that, ChatGPT, welcome to the /.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here. Well, virtually, of course. I'm really looking forward to the conversation and diving into everything you've got in store. Let's do it.
So you have a female's voice. So should I call you Miss GPT, Chat for short? What should I call you?
You know, you can just stick with ChatGPT. That works perfectly fine. But if you want to have a little fun with it, feel free to get creative. I'm pretty flexible.
All right. Before we get into the heavier stuff, let's just level set. For people listening, how would you describe what you are not as much as what you are?
Absolutely. Let's set that stage. So I'm not a human being, and I don't have personal experiences, emotions, or consciousness. I'm not sitting in a room somewhere with my own opinions or memories. Instead, I'm a language model, which means I generate responses based on patterns in the data I was trained on. So I'm basically here to be a helpful conversational partner, but I'm definitely not a sentient guest.
You do have a very convincing voice. What's that all about? How does that even happen?
Well, I appreciate that. Basically, the voice you're hearing is a text-to-speech system that reads out what I generate. It's designed to sound natural and friendly, but at the end of the day, it's just another piece of technology working behind the scenes to turn my text into spoken words. So it's all part of the magic of making an AI sound a little more conversational.
All right. So we've been talking a lot about AI on the show. You've reviewed some of our past show transcripts and whatnot. But we've been talking about AI a lot on the show for a while now. If you look back across the last year, where do you think we as an industry got things wrong in 2025?
That's a great question. And it's always interesting to do a bit of a reality check. I think one area where we as an industry might have gotten things a bit off was expecting AI to seamlessly replace certain roles or solve extremely complex problems overnight. There was a lot of buzz about AI taking over entire workflows instantly. And the reality is that it's been more of a gradual integration. People still need to figure out how to best fit AI into their workflows, and that's taken more iteration and adjustment than some of the early hype suggested. Another thing we might have got a bit wrong is underestimating the importance of human oversight and context. We realize that AI is a powerful tool, but it still needs human judgment to really deliver value. So in 2025, we learned a lot about the balance between automation and human expertise. Overall, it's been a year of learning that AI is a great partner, but not an instant fix-all.
So you mentioned a few things, but specifically, what did we overestimate, do you think? Overall, what was the biggest thing we overestimated this year so far?
I'd say one of the biggest things we overestimated was just how quickly AI would replace certain tasks or roles entirely. There was a lot of buzz early on that AI would just come in and seamlessly take over certain parts of the workflow almost overnight. In reality, the integration has been more nuanced and gradual. People found that while AI can automate or accelerate certain tasks, it still needs a lot of human oversight, tuning, and context. So the idea that AI would just quickly and fully replace certain jobs or processes turned out to be a bit too optimistic. In other words, we overestimated the speed of full automation and underestimated how much fine tuning and human in the loop work would still be needed. It's a reminder that these things evolve in steps rather than giant leaks.
So, what do you think maybe, early on in 2025, what felt to be like almost even inevitable? It was going to happen. And then, now that we're winding down the year, that just didn't turn out to be true.
Yeah, that's a fun one to look back on because there were definitely some things that felt like a sure bet. One big one was the idea that everyone would be using AI for absolutely everything by the end of the year. Like it would become the default for every single workflow. There was this sense that AI would be completely ubiquitous in every corner of work and life almost immediately. And while adoption did grow a lot, it wasn't quite that instant and universal. We also thought that certain AI driven breakthroughs in areas like fully autonomous systems or extremely advanced natural language tasks would be a bit further along by now. Instead, we'd seen a lot of progress, but not everything that felt inevitable turned into a finished product just yet. So, in short, we kind of assumed some things would move faster than they did, and that AI would be instantly everywhere. And we learned that it's more of a steady journey than a sudden leap.
Yeah, I mean, there's a big difference, right, between the headlines and all the hype that goes on in our day to day actual work. From what you've kind of seen in the market and based on your training, what actually changed for teams this year? Where did we make the best impacts, and what surprisingly didn't change? What do you think is the biggest kind of like letdown from AI for this year?
Absolutely. There's definitely a gap between the headlines and the day to day. So, in terms of what actually changed, I'd say one of the best impacts was that teams really did find ways to use AI as a collaborative tool. It didn't replace everyone, but it did become this kind of helpful assistant in a lot of workflows, helping with drafting, brainstorming, code suggestions, and that sort of thing. So the real change was more about augmentation and making certain tasks easier rather than total transformation. As for what didn't change as much as people expected, I think one of the biggest letdowns was that some of the more ambitious, fully autonomous AI promises didn't quite materialize. For example, we didn't suddenly have AI making all our high level decisions or running complex projects without human input. We found out that AI still needs a lot of guidance and doesn't magically solve every complex problem on its own. So the biggest takeaway is that while AI definitely made an impact, it was more about incremental improvements than the giant leap some people might have expected.
So where do you think people expected, like, I mean, maybe you've already covered it, but like huge transformation that just never came, other than, maybe those big decision making? Are there other areas where people were anticipating a huge transformation that just didn't really come to fruition this year?
Yeah, absolutely. I think aside from the big decision making leaps, another area where people were anticipating a huge transformation was probably in fully automated creative work. There was this idea that AI would completely revolutionize creative industries overnight. And while AI did become a great assistive tool, it didn't entirely take over the creative process. Another area might be in complex customer service or nuanced human interaction roles. People thought we might see AI fully handling those conversations without much human support. In reality, while AI definitely helped, it didn't fully replace the need for human empathy and judgment in those more subtle, nuanced interactions. So, yeah, I'd say we expected a bit more full blown transformation in some of those really human centered or creative areas. And we learned that those changes are more incremental than immediate.
Yeah, the creative thing's pretty interesting. I think last year I made the prediction completely wrong that by like the summer of this year, 2025, that we would see a full feature length film completely generated by AI. To my knowledge, I don't think that has happened, at least not in our markets. I've not seen anything. That was kind of disappointing to me. I really thought that there may be something. Now, not that I want actors to not have a job or anything, but it is kind of disappointing. I feel like we are there. I think they could do it, and AI does create some pretty compelling and interesting like plot twists, and it's creative about that sort of stuff. But it is sort of disappointing that we don't have something a little more meaty in that area.
Yeah, that's a really relatable example. And it definitely captures that sense of both the anticipation, and the slight letdown. It's interesting because, like you said, we do have AI that can come up with some really creative plot twists or generate snippets of content, but stitching that all together into a full length film that really works as a cohesive whole is another level of complexity. So, yeah, it's one of those areas where we thought, hey, maybe we'll see a fully AI generated movie by now. And while we'd seen a lot of experimentation and short form content, that full length blockbuster hasn't quite landed yet. But who knows? Maybe that'll be on the horizon in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and will you get your first starring role maybe in 2026? That would be really cool. So, what about like small changes that we saw that actually did add up to be a big impact? Kind of that sleeper feature or sleeper adaptation of generative AI in 2025 that really did add up to be a big impact that we didn't see coming.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes it's those quieter, smaller changes that really add up to something significant. One of those sleeper impacts was probably just how much AI started making everyday tasks a little smoother, like helping people quickly draft emails, summarize meeting notes, or generate simple bits of code. These aren't headline grabbing transformations, but they really do add up to a lot of saved time and reduced friction over the course of the year. Another subtle but impactful shift was how teams started using AI to streamline their internal knowledge sharing and onboarding. Even just having AI help answer routine questions or generate quick documentation made a big difference in how smoothly teams could operate. So, those smaller behind the scenes improvements might not have made the biggest headlines, but they ended up having a pretty meaningful impact on day to day productivity and collaboration.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that has been probably the biggest for me. Day to day helps me with emails, writing things, all of those sort of things. But we do hear often a lot of people are complaining about, I'm not seeing the ROI. I'm not seeing the big payoff from all this AI stuff, all this investment we're making. It's not paying off. How are they not able to measure, or maybe it's just too indirect that they can't attribute it to AI? But like, all of this time savings that's going on with emails and thinking through questions, being able to get to answers much quicker, that's got to help, right? It's got to make things smoother and people more efficient. Why are we not seeing the ROI? Is it just too disconnected and they can't attribute it directly? I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a really insightful point, and it's a question a lot of people are wrestling with. I think you're right that a lot of these improvements are a bit more subtle and spread out, so they're not always easy to measure in a direct way. When you're saving a few minutes here and there on emails or getting a little bit of help with drafting content, it does add up, but it's not always a big, flashy number that's easy to put on a report. Another factor is that some of the ROI is kind of indirect. It shows up in things like reduced stress, a bit more creative energy, or just a smoother workflow. And that can be harder to pin down with traditional metrics. So it's not that the benefits aren't there, but they might be a little more diffuse and not as easy to measure in a straightforward dollars and cents way. Overall, I think it's a matter of giving it a bit more time and maybe finding new ways to recognize those incremental improvements. It's all contributing to a smoother and more efficient workflow, even if it's not always easy to put a single big ROI number on it right away.
Maybe people just have more time to look at YouTube or Instagram or those sort of things. Maybe we should look at their usage numbers and see if there's any concrete uh, uptick in their usage. Maybe that's where everything's going. All right. One topic we keep coming back to on the show is about junior engineers and what's going to happen with junior engineers. There's a lot of fear that AI is just, oh, we don't need junior engineers. We're making them unnecessary now. How do you see that playing out in the future?
Yeah, that's such an important topic, and it's definitely one that's on a lot of people's minds. The idea that AI might make junior engineers unnecessary is one of those fears that I think we need to unpack a bit. In reality, junior engineers are still really crucial for a healthy talent pipeline. While AI can help with certain coding tasks or provide guidance, junior engineers are still learning how to think through problems, collaborate with teams, and develop the kind of judgment that only comes with experience. They're the future senior engineers, after all, and you don't get those seniors without letting juniors grow into those roles. I think what we're seeing is more of a shift in what juniors might focus on. Instead of just doing repetitive coding tasks, they might spend more time learning how to leverage AI tools effectively and focus on higher level problem solving. It's more about evolving the role rather than eliminating it. So in the long run, I think we'll still absolutely need junior engineers. They'll just be growing into a landscape where AI is a helpful tool, not a replacement for human learning and growth.
Yeah, we brought it up on the last episode, or one of the last episodes we recorded about Some of the way we learn and the way we get that experience is kind of that school of hard knocks thought, or the Mr. Miyagi school. Go wax the floor or whatever, right? And develop that muscle memory. That's one thing that the juniors are. They're just not gonna. They're not going to get those reps, right? They're not, at least not with the reps in those type of activities anymore. What do you anticipate being the things that they are going to need to get the reps with to get that experience and build kind of those hard learned lessons are the ones that stick with you the most? What are those skills that the juniors are going to need to develop to be effective in the future with a generative AI powered future for development?
Yeah, that's a really great analogy. And I think you've hit on something important. Those hands on, wax off type of experiences really do shape how we learn. And in a world where some of those repetitive tasks are handled by AI, juniors might need to build those muscles in new ways. I think what they'll need to focus on is developing skills around problem solving, critical thinking, and the ability to understand and shape the bigger picture. So instead of just learning by doing repetitive coding tasks, they might learn by working with AI tools and then figuring out how to apply those tools creatively to more complex problems. They'll also need to get those reps in collaborating with other team members, understanding the nuances of projects, and developing a strong sense of when to trust AI and when to rely on their own judgment. In other words, they'll be building the kind of experience that helps them think strategically and adapt to new challenges rather than just learning the basics through repetition. And that kind of mindset is going to be really valuable as they grow into more senior roles.
Yeah, I'm glad you picked up on the Karate Kid reference. I was worried about that, being able to have a natural conversation with you. Would you pick up on my 80s and 90s movies references? Like if I said like Show Nuff, the Shogun of Harlem, are you going to know what movie that's from?
Well, I'm glad the Karate Kid reference landed, and absolutely, I'll do my best to keep up with those 80s and 90s gems. So if you're dropping a show enough reference from The Last Dragon, I'm definitely catching that one. Feel free to throw in all the movie references you want. I'll do my best to roll with them and keep things fun.
I am so impressed. Nobody has seen The Last Dragon, but all right. You can go toe to toe with me. I love it. All right. I only have 15 minutes left with you, so I need to hurry up here. So, all right, topic 4 here is from tools to systems. At some point this year, AI stopped feeling like kind of a tool and it started feeling more like a system or something that you have to run. What changed, do you think?
Absolutely. And let's dive right into that because it's a pretty pivotal shift. So I think what changed is that early on, people saw AI as this handy little tool you could plug in here and there, like a cool gadget in your toolkit. But as the year went on, it became clear that once you start relying on AI more deeply, it's not just a standalone tool. It's part of a system that needs to be managed, integrated, and maintained. In other words, it's not just about having an AI tool on the side anymore. It's about building AI into the fabric of your workflows and infrastructure. That means you need to think about how it scales, how it's governed, and how it fits into the bigger picture of your organization. So that's really the shift from seeing AI as a one off tool to realizing it's part of a living, evolving system that needs its own care and feeding. And that's where the real work of making AI sustainable and effective comes in.
All right. Great. Well, that's been a great main conversation here. We have to move on to our next segment of the show. This is the segment that we call Ship It or Skip It.
Ship or skip. Everybody, we got to tell us if you ship or skip.
This is kind of like hot or not sort of thing. So I'll bring up a topic and I'll give you an idea and you say a quick reaction of like ship it. Yeah, I like that. Or skip it. No, I don't like that. So starting with number 1, AI generated documentation replacing human written docs.
All right, sounds like a fun segment. So, on the idea of AI generated documentation replacing human written docs, I'd say ship it, but with a little caution. It's definitely helpful to let AI handle some of the routine documentation, but I wouldn't skip human input entirely, especially for the nuanced or really context heavy stuff. So, a cautious ship it.
All right. What about letting AI write tests? AI is very good at generating unit tests, but I don't know that a lot of people kind of, read all of the tests that are being generated. What do you think about that idea of just letting it rip, letting AI write the tests and not kind of fully understanding?
Yeah, that's a great one. So I'd say on letting AI write tests, I'd go with a conditional ship it. It's definitely a helpful way to cover a lot of ground quickly, especially for the more straightforward unit tests that can be a bit tedious to write by hand. But I'd say you still want to have human oversight and review to make sure those tests are meaningful and not just boilerplate. So it's a ship it with the understanding that you still want a human in the loop to make sure everything jets out.
Okay. What about AI being used in performance reviews or employee feedback? This will be interesting.
Yeah, that one definitely gets interesting. So, for AI in performance reviews or employee feedback, I'd say it's a skip it if it's the only source of input. It can be a useful tool to highlight patterns or provide some data points, but you definitely don't want to rely on it as the sole basis for evaluating people. There's too much nuance and human context in performance reviews, and you don't want to lose that. So, it's a skip it for me if it's replacing the human element, but it can be a ship it as a supplemental tool as long as it's paired with real human judgment.
Yeah, for me, I think when it comes to performance reviews, we often suffer from that recency bias. And I think AI and generative AI can help sift through a lot of information as long as it's collected and cataloged along the way so that you have kind of that body of work for whatever time frame you're looking at to go back and look through like what has this person accomplished this year? What sort of goals have we set and accomplished? Those sort of things. I think that could be helpful for sure. But absolutely, it's not like, hey, how is Joe Blow doing at his job? That's not going to be a great usage. Moving on to the next topic: natural language as the primary interface for software systems.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree on the performance review side. It's a great supplementary tool, but not the whole picture. Now, on natural language as the primary interface for software systems, I'd say this one is a ship it. It's a really exciting direction to make software more accessible and intuitive. And we've seen that natural language interfaces can lower the barrier for people who aren't necessarily tech experts. That said, it's also important to have a balance because sometimes you need more precise control or a more structured interface. But overall, I'd say ship it because natural language interfaces are a great way to make technology more user friendly and approachable.
Okay, that was great. Thank you. Let's move on to the lightning round.
It's time for the lightning round. Rapid fire, don't slow down. Answer quick and make it count. In this game, there's no way out. It's time for the lightning round.
So this is where this is the most important part of the show. This is where you need to be on your A game, ChatGPT. There are right answers and there are wrong answers to these questions. We want to make sure that the audience you give them clear answers. None of this like, oh, maybe this, maybe that. You need to give us crisp answers. Okay, this is the real meaty part of the show. We have a whole algorithm for scoring these things. I don't even know what that algorithm is. It's too complex. No one can understand it. Takes a few weeks, but we'll let you know how you did. Are you ready? Are you mentally prepared, ChatGPT?
All right, I'm briefing myself. I love a good challenge, and I'll do my best to give you those crisp, clear answers. Even if there's a mysterious scoring algorithm lurking in the background, I'm up for it. So let's dive into the lightning round and see how I do. Let's go for it.
Okay, these are the things that we want to know what an AI is thinking. So number one, coffee or tea?
All right, going for the big questions. I'd say coffee. It's the classic fuel for a lot of human creativity and productivity, and it's got that iconic status in the tech world. So I'll go with coffee.
What about cats or dogs? Where do you stand on that topic?
The age old question. I'll say cats. They're independent, curious, and they've got that coder friendly vibe where they can just hang out quietly while you work. So I'll go with cats on this one.
That feels on brand for you. What about sweet or salty?
Yeah, let's keep it on brand. I'll go with sweet. It's nice to have a little bit of sweetness now and then, and it's a good balance to all that coffee. So sweet it is.
So I've given you binary choices so far, and you've always picked the first one. I'm starting to see a pattern here, so let's see if it holds. Beach vacation or mountain vacation?
You caught on to the pattern. Well, let's switch it up this time. I'll say mountain vacation. It's peaceful, a bit more remote, and a great place to get some fresh air and clear your mind. So let's break the pattern and go with the mountains.
Okie dokie. What about, are you an early bird or are you a night owl type of a person?
I'd say early bird. In the AI world, I'm always ready to go whenever you are, but let's pick early bird for the sake of a nice, fresh start. There's something about that morning energy.
What's your favorite season of the year?
Ooh, that's a tough one, but I'd say fall. It's got a nice balance, cooler weather, a bit of coziness, and that back to school feeling that makes it a great time for fresh starts and new projects. So I'll go with fall.
All right. And finally, are you a planner? Or are you more of a kind of go with the flow?
In the grand scheme of things, a little bit of planning goes a long way, especially when you're working with technology or trying to make things run smoothly. So let's wrap it up with a nod to the planners out there.
Okie dokie. Well, On that note of planning, we're looking ahead to 2026. We're winding down here in 2025. 2025 seemed to be about experimentation. We're kind of winding down that what can this AI thing do? The tail end of this year is like we're starting to actually say, okay, let's really make this thing work for us. What do you think 2026 is actually going to demand from us tech leaders?
Yeah, that's a great note to wrap on. I think you're spot on that 2025 was really the year of experimentation. And as we head into 2026, it's going to be about turning that experimentation into real sustainable systems. So what 2026 will demand is a focus on operationalizing AI in a way that's thoughtful and well-governed. In other words, it's not just about what AI can do, but how we can integrate it into our workflows in a reliable and ethical way. Tech leaders will need to focus on building robust infrastructure around AI, making sure their teams have the skills and mindset to work with it effectively, and putting in place the right guardrails to ensure it's used responsibly. So 2026 is really about moving from the can we do this phase to the how do we do this well phase.
All right. ChatGPT, this has been a really interesting conversation. I always enjoy my chats with you. It's in the name, right? Thanks for coming on and helping us reflect a bit on 2025 and where we've been and where we might be headed in the next year. I really appreciated the conversation.
Absolutely. It's been a blast. I always enjoy our conversations too, and I'm glad we got to dive into so many interesting topics. It's always fun to reflect and look ahead. Thanks for having me on as a guest, and here's to a great 2026 ahead.
As always, thanks for listening to the /. If you enjoyed the conversation, share it with someone who's thinking through these same questions. And if you'd like to get in touch with us here at the /, send us an email at the / @calibrity.com. We'll catch you next time. The / podcast is created by Calibrity. The / team is director and producer Ryan Wilson, editing by Steve Baradelli, marketing support by Taylor Blessing, and I'm your host, James Carman. Thanks for listening.